The Allegheny Journal is joined by members of the Covington Police Department today, Chief Anthony Morgan and First Sergeant Chris Smith. We're here to talk about police issues and policing in Covington. Welcome, fellas.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Part of the policing effort in Covington is no less complex than anywhere else in Virginia, and these two are chiefly responsible for that. First Sergeant, what's going on in Covington of interest to the citizenry right now?
Big thing in this particular area, one of the big things that we're dealing with are different types of scams, whether or not they're an internet scam or a phone scam, or it can be, social media such as Facebook or Twitter. People have to be careful about what they do when they acknowledge particular things on the computer that they're not familiar with.
People are acting like they're somebody else.
Well, it goes two ways. It depends on the format that they're using. If they use a format such as just the regular Facebook, yeah, they can have a friend that might be a messenger, that might send them a message on Messenger where they're acting like they're friends, but really it's actually somebody that hacked into the system and is trying to get them to give them money in some way, shape, or form.
You would think people would have something better to do than something like this.
Well, I mean, a lot of problem with scams, and I've been dealing with them for a long time, is they used to be phone scams. You would get phone calls, and they would say, hey, this is your grandson or, granddaughter, or whatever the case may be. I've been arrested in, let's say, California. Can you send me some money? Well, they target the elderly portion of the community. They realize that that particular portion of the community is maybe less familiar with particular trends that are going on in a particular area. So they target these particular specific group in hopes to gain whatever money they can, and they do it in a whole slew of different ways. And their newest one is using the internet, such as it used to be where they would send you an email, and all you'd have to do is click on something. The next thing you know, they have all your information. Now they're using social media such as like Facebook, and they're sending you messages, and you think you're talking to could be anybody, could be your friend, could be your mother, and that's not the case. It's actually somebody that's trying to.
Well, Chief Morgan, you're relatively new to Covington. It seems to me and others that you've introduced an interesting new technique of visiting the members of the community. Can you tell the public a little bit about what you fellows have been doing?
Yes, we are going into our third week of the community canvas, and what we're doing is we're going door to door in the city of Covington, and we're getting feedback from residents. So what's important for me as the new chief coming in is as we go forward and we're trying to frame the goals for the organization, what do the officers think is important, but also getting what the community thinks important and melding those two things together. So far we've had about a 60% success rate on a lot of our knocks with people being home, and we're getting some really good feedback from residents, and we're going to use a lot of that information. We're using it actually every day to kind of direct how we do our traffic enforcement and how we can disseminate information when residents tell us that, hey, there's a drug house in their neighborhood, how we can make sure that we're addressing them, and then come back and give them feedback and let them know, hey, we heard your concern, here's what we did about it. So that way there's some follow-up and some follow-through. And you've had some concerns about speeding. Didn't we hear that? Yes, the number one concern from everyone that we've talked to has been traffic, whether it's been speeding or other traffic-related violations. So we're looking at putting in place more patrols directed at traffic enforcement, because that is right now the number one and two concerns that we're getting from residents so far.
Investigator Smith, didn't you mention that there is a gasoline kind of scam that you wanted to talk about? There's some kind of a device that crooks can use to obtain credit card information, and you've witnessed that at least at a couple stations in the region?
Yeah, you got to think about this. I mean, the one main thoroughfare that we have that comes through Covington is I-64. That gives access to pretty much anywhere in the U.S. So you have these individuals. What they do is they'll target these rest areas or these particular areas where people will come off the interstate. They'll find a gas station real close by, and then they're going to gas up and move on. Well, the problem with that is that they find these very same gas stations, and what they generally do is they pick the farthest gas pump away from the store in itself, and they'll insert a device inside the particular gas pumps. And they can only get into certain ones. It's not every single one.
They have a special key or
Well,
access
it's not necessarily,
device.
it's just a generic key. The problem is it's just a generic key, and they wind up getting that particular key, whatever way they get it, they get that generic key, and then they can go and visit certain particular gas stations. And what they do is they insert the device. It can be something as simple as just something that records the information as you slide your card in. It can be as complex as where he's standing by, real close by, and it's Bluetooth, where he's getting all the information Bluetooth. So as soon as you put your card in there, it's going somewhere else and somebody's using that information. So you just have to be careful about where you're putting your cards in. If you're going to your gas station, try to pick the pump that's closest to the store, somewhere where somebody can visibly actually see the pump from the store. They're not going to most likely use that particular pump. They're going to try to do it somewhere else. We're kind of far. Larger gas stations are a bigger target too because of a lot of the traffic, and there's more pumps to store their device in.
That's a really good tip. Chief Morgan, earlier this week, or perhaps it was at the end of last week, wasn't there a little bit of a talk about an alleged threat or some kind of a hoax of a threat in Covington with respect to the school division?
Yes, on Sunday night, teenagers in our area began sharing, and it got, of course, to parents, and about a potential threat against Covington High School. There was a picture posted of a male gentleman holding a rifle. People were calling the police department. We immediately notified the schools. Actually, that evening, the principal of Covington High School and the superintendent both came down to the police department. My staff met them there, and we talked about this particular threat. One of the Sergeant Burt Baker, did an excellent job in looking online and found that this particular posting had been made in Clovis, New Mexico. And it had been reposted. Some re-editing was done on the internet, which is just very important for parents to kind of be aware when it comes to social media, things like that with juveniles and with youth, is things can be edited and things can be altered and things can be changed to fit a narrative that's not true. And in that situation, the post was from something that happened in New Mexico. Authorities there had already arrested the juvenile. He was already taken into custody and charged with the offense. And we were able to quickly kind of get out there on our Facebook page as well as the schools that this was a hoax. It was not true. But it caused concern for law enforcement throughout the country because it just kept being reposted everywhere.
By the way, you received some praise for fast and almost immediate response to this at last night's Covington School Board meeting. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but I mean, that was very positive that you guys were proactive and professionally handled this, because parents out there in citizen land, they had no idea how serious this issue was. So that was very nice and a very fast response. It was very complimentary of the department last night. Investigator Smith, if people run into a crime or they run into a situation where they want to contact the police department, who should they speak with and what number should they use?
Well, if it's an emergency, obviously anytime you call the police department, 911 is the number you're going to want to use, but there are other numbers that you can use. In the city of Covington, we have a non-emergency number, which is 965-6333. That number is for any type of other situation that doesn't involve necessarily an emergency situation. Just to give you an idea, let's say you have a neighbor that has a dog that barks at night. Well, 911 is not the appropriate number to call for that particular incident to deal with. That's why we have the non-emergency number. We try to use the 911 system just for emergencies. And we'd rather it not get tied up with minor incidences that we can handle separately from dealing with emergency situations.
7 days a week, 24/7, 365.
Yes, correct.
Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, and we appreciate you partnering with us to get information out there.